Fomo.
We need to be the place where you never miss out again.
Alright guys, welcome back to Vibe Trading, the show where I go on various traders and builders in the space. Today we have someone who is, I guess, one of the very hot fundamental builders right now that is actually facilitating half of the trading in the space. You would have all seen Fomo. I think like the hype is very real and the growth is very real. So, Say, co-founder of Fomo, thanks for coming on the show. How are you doing, man?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having me.
You guys obviously had a pretty, I'd say, killer past few months. And I obviously saw also some tweets you were putting out over the last few days about like all-time high users and volume and stuff like that. What do you think kind of changed? Like, where do you think this pickup is coming from at the moment?
I think it's just a long-term game, right? Like when you build a consumer app, a lot of it is distribution, and distribution doesn't really happen overnight, contrary to what people think in crypto. It takes a lot of time. You need to kind of show up every day. You need to ship new products, increase on product features, and kind of just be there every single day for people to see you, what you're doing in public, and the things that you're shipping. I think given the social nature of crypto and FOMO specifically, it's been pretty easy to have that kind of disseminate outside of, our own core team's efforts. People like to share their P&L cards, success stories, leaderboards, feed items, etc. So yeah, it's been really cool to see it grow, and it makes us happy every day and hungrier to ship more and more.
Yeah, and I've seen in a couple other things you talk about how you feel that a lot of the growth is very much led by the product and then the users kind of becoming evangelists for that product and informing how it grows. And I think that's very true. I even saw you say somewhere that you guys were only spending something like a quarter of your daily revenue on growth or something like that. Have you now like started to scale that at all? Is it still, purely like an organic style of growth? How's it looking on that side?
Yeah, I mean, I think we still spend pretty little compared to most other, companies in our shoes. We probably spend more like, a day and a half revenue when it comes to growth budget now, but it's all cool stuff. We get to sponsor a lot of great creators like yourself and, people who are doing great content, educating people and just showing the world what this is about, whether it's the crypto crowd or not. But that's most of our effort. We still don't do any paid trading deals. We don't do any retainer deals. We don't do anything that, other, I would say, terminals or trading products do, just because we kind of feel like the organic nature of the social needs to reinforce itself. And if you start throwing inorganic into it, it becomes a little bit difficult to see, what's noise and what is.
And I think like the a lot of the growth obviously and like general use case for FOMO has been this like social layer that you guys have basically built, right? And something I've long felt when it comes to building crypto apps, and I'm sure many would agree, is that everyone's kind of trading and discussing and sharing ideas on Twitter, on Telegram. Like it's very hard to force users onto a new platform, right? But you guys actually, I guess like against all odds, were able to do that. And especially since you did it like without this insane like amount of spending or like growth like that, it being obviously partially or mainly driven by like the product side, how do you feel like as now one of the apps that has this key social layer, like what does it kind of allow you to do and like, turn FOMO into like from here?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing we've always said since day one is FOMO is a trading app, but the social is kind of what keeps it sticky and continues to let it grow. So right now we're positioned as hopefully one of the best places to trade on chain. I think there's still a lot for us to improve on. There's new asset classes to add. There's better features to build, and there's a lot of things to improve. But I think the social angle here really is that we want this to be one of the biggest social media platforms in the world, not just one of the biggest trading apps. And if you kind of take a look at, let's say, like the Metas and equivalents of the world, they're typically worth a lot more than the Coinbases and Robinhoods of the world. And a lot of that is network effects, right? You have a user, they're very sticky, they have some LTV over the course of time, and the social really leans into that. So there's a lot of stuff that comes through via Meta ads or Instagram ads or, kind of things in between. So for us, our end goal is to become on par with the Twitters and the Facebooks and, Reddits and other big social media conglomerates in the world. We want to be with this place where you can come in here, you can discuss your trade ideas, your investment theses, the things you're doing in real time, whether it's, parking 4% treasury bills or buying Bitcoin or going along the NASDAQ, and give you this forum where you can speculate openly, see what other people are doing, and create a network around this that, just allows for a lot of transparency, which I think is what the ethos of crypto is.
And I think as well, when you think about like coming into this market and trying to compete in a very competitive space like, Solana, but obviously also the other chains that you guys support, it feels like, I've often felt like as AI and all these things get better and things get easier to build, the moat around these things becomes harder to build as well. And so like on top of the social, you have like the behavior around it. And I would say that going from the Axiom GMGN style, like very low pair trench style trading of meme coins to, I think there's like a slightly different behavior that you kind of see on the average FOMO trader, which is like, slightly longer hold times, a bit more believing, a bit more of this like community driven kind of thing, as opposed to like this new pair drilling that you see a lot nowadays. Do you feel like, whether it be intentional or not, that FOMO is, I guess, like one of the pioneers in pushing the behavior of traders into, I think, what people would mostly agree is like a slightly healthier, um, more sustainable way of trading on chain at the moment?
Yeah, definitely. And that's all intentional. I think, you use the web product a lot and we talk about features and adding this and that. And I think one of the core product decisions we made early on was we're not trying to be a terminal. We're not trying to give you all the information plus more. We're not trying to add new features on top of new features. We're not trying to kind of optimize for this game where you're kind of trading 10K market cap coins and dumping them at 50K and doing it over and over again. Well, I think there is a place for that. I don't think it's on FOMO. But you can see through the app, both on mobile and web, we've been very intentional about what we've built, right? There's a lot of things that prevent you from having, too much information. It's very approachable as a normie. It's very usable as a crypto user. And it just kind of blends these things in such a way where, hey, if you want to do, high frequency trading, if you want to do meme coin scalping, there's a better platform out there. And we admit that. So one of the things, we decided early on was we can't build for everyone. So we need to build for the users who are a little bit more aligned with the direction that we think this trading environment is healthiest in. And I think the analogy that we often give is you can think about, the high frequency trading wars, right? Where early on, nobody really had a great infrastructure. Everybody was trying to compete. And then you get Jump and Tower and Jane Street, and they build better infrastructure than you. So they're going to win the game 99.9% of time. And, you as a retail participant are just going to get picked off every single time. So it becomes this game that's no longer worth playing. And I think that's even similar for like smaller market makers. Unless you have a fundamental edge, you just don't really compete in the market in a way that's conducive to growth. So that's kind of how I view like low cap meme coin trenching. I don't want to say it's a soft game, but it's a game where a lot of the best people just are going to win pretty much every time, right? There's not a real chance for a normie to come in here and understand what's going on and develop an intuition to, compete with the guys who are doing this every single day for 16 hours a day. And that's completely fine. That's not the game they want to play. That's not the game they should be playing. And, we want to be stewards of people who can just come in and understand and, learn from day one and develop an identity to trade over the course of time.
I guess like saying that though, in terms of, if there are certain features with these low caps that people want, they can go to other platforms for that, and that's totally fine. And I think that it's very bold of you guys to, on purpose, restrict certain things like in terms of information and edges in order to like force people to focus on a different style. But you guys obviously still have released the web terminal, and that's been obviously performing very well. It sounds like, I mean, just from your tweets, like you said, that it already is currently doing 20% of FOMO volume. And, I can tell you that, myself as a beta tester before it even went live, and as someone who, is kind of like full time doing this, and I sit at my computer basically for, at least 12 hours a day, if not more sometimes. As much as I love trading on my phone if I'm on the go, I'm always going to choose like a web experience because that's where I'm most of the time. And to be honest, I feel like my phone is more of a distraction than anything. So I like to be able to have this stuff on web. But the web has obviously been doing super well. I think it's a really great product, and I think that one of the reasons it's so good is because it is so minimalist. Like it almost feels like what iOS would build if they were building like a web trading app or something like that. You know what I mean? And I'm sure it still has a long way to go, but what was the process of kind of building that, and how do you think you make this into like a 100x even better product from here?
Yeah, it's definitely still work in progress. I think, we had two paths, right? It's like one, ship a product, get it out there, iterate with user feedback in real time and get it out in like a month, or build this over 6 months and make it the most perfect product. And if you kind of weigh those two things, the people who do the former often end up much further along on the same 6 month time frame than the people who do the latter. Just because if you spend 6 months with no user feedback, just making everything in the way you think is perfect without battle testing it, you end up in like this awkward space where like sure it might be beautiful, but is it functional, right? Is it useful for you to actually look at information, to place trades, to navigate the experience? And I think that we kind of find that the answer to that is no. The better answer is get to market quickly, understand where the flaws are, hear from your power users, and really leverage crypto's, power user nature, which is if something's wrong, like 10 people are going to tell you within the first minute. If, this thing sucks, they're going to tell you right away. And there's no other industry where you can ship a product and get immediate feedback. You can even think about traditional finance, right? Where let's say Robinhood comes out with their social feature. They're not going to hear that this is good or not for, a month, 3 months, 6 months, because users just aren't going to be able to one, have the right connection line to you to tell you, hey, this sucks or this is good or whatnot. And two, there's just too many users. So how do you collect a good enough sample size for it to make sense? Versus here, like we launched the web app the first day, I probably had 300 messages on things we could do better. And that's the shit that's fun, right? That's like, man, like there's so much attention on this thing. There's so many things we can do better. There's so much scrutiny. And I think the best builders are the ones who can take that scrutiny, understand what the feedback is, and then, deliver the best experience over time via iteration. And you mentioned iOS, and that's obviously something that we look at as a model. Apple and all of the design philosophies as a whole. One of the conversations that we had with Ethan at Benchmark, who led our Series A, is we were like, hey, we should ship this product. It needs to be really polished. And he's like, people think that Apple always ships great products, but the first iPhone sucked. Email didn't even work. And what you learn from that is like over time, people forgive you, right? You start to build beautiful things and things that work better and better every day. And people put on their rose tinted sunglasses and they're like, man, this thing has always been great. When in reality, like there was a journey and there was a lot of process to get here. That's kind of how we view it. It's like get to market, iterate, get feedback from people like yourself and just try to ship the best product. And that's the funnest part of this job. It's being able to deliver something that people really care enough to give you feedback about.
And I'm sure, obviously, like as you said, you've been getting a lot of feedback. Like, where do you feel like FOMO is actually weak right now? And which of those things are, I guess, the biggest priorities for you to address?
Yeah, I think that gets segmented into two user groups. It's like your retail user and your crypto user. We can focus on the crypto user for this conversation. I think there's a few things, right? One is you need to have better token discovery. So right now, for you to discover tokens, there's a sidebar on your web app, and you have all these lists, and you can split it into 4 views, but it's still not super customizable, right? You have this trending list, you have this crypto list, you have most held, etc. I think what we're really missing is the surface area where you can go in there and say, hey, like I have a 10% better edge than your algorithm, so I want to be able to set this filter, and in return, I'm going to be able to buy this on platform, and everybody else can see it a little bit earlier. So that's one thing is giving people a little bit more surface area to customize token lists. Two is like broader customization. We want to add a lot more to alerts where you can filter by, amount of market cap, by buy or sell, by just VCs, by, just people that you follow over 100K in portfolio. Like these things that make it a little bit more granular of an experience where, ultimately the goal is you never have to leave the app, right? So we don't want to have to make it such that you need to have, 6 different wallet trackers and have this news feed and this and that. We hope that over time we can bring all this information in app natively. So that's something that we're working on. And then the third thing is execution. I think that execution is this game where you're never really satisfied. Even on Solana today, we probably get you, 500 millisecond transactions. But what if it could be 200 milliseconds, right? What if it's only limited by the block time and you can cut the actual latency between all the transaction fetching logic and everything in between? Then you can optimize that to be a little bit faster. I think base, monad, BNB, EVM generally, they're transactions that take, 5, 10 seconds. What if we can get that to 1 to 2 seconds? And it's a game of how do you iterate on the technology that exists versus leverage what people have built so far to build this experience that is just better than anything everybody's ever seen. And I think the silver lining or the grace that you get with crypto is the UX has just been so bad that people just, see a 10-second swap and they're like, you know what, like that's better than bridging, doing this, setting up a wallet, finding the DEX and, connecting my wallet and such. So it is a 10x improvement, but I think we can still do a 10x improvement execution. I think those three things will allow us to really kind of speed run this like journey of becoming one of the biggest web platforms in crypto. I think we're still far from it, and there's a lot of other players who do a really good job with it. And yeah, our job is to kind of ship what we think is going to be the best for our users.
I think there's this big issue as well as being a builder or running a platform in crypto, which is that in a space where everything is so narrative and meta driven, it can be very hard to build with like the foresight of what's actually coming and what's going to be hot. Now, you guys are obviously somewhat in a beneficial position because you're supporting multiple chains, and so even if there are maybe competitors who are like slightly sharper on specific chains or something like that, the fact that you have everything gives you like a huge edge, right? Um, but how do you like generally think about like that aspect of things? Like I'm not necessarily asking you for specifically your predictions of what chains do you think are going to be traded on and stuff in the future, but like I think is like an important discussion to have about building this kind of like foresight, especially in a market that changes so much like crypto.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we need to stay sharp on. It's like, where's the puck going? I think it's too late if the puck is already there and now you build towards this thing that people realize they want. So in a lot of ways, it has happened to us in certain things where, hey, we thought we would have until maybe end of the year to build perps. Turns out, Cerberus IPO and pre-IPO SpaceX is really popular, right? And people are really loving Hip3 markets. So that's something that, we could have been a little bit better about to getting to the puck of. But yeah, I think it's just being on the ground, right? Like you need to be somebody who is talking to users every day, who is in the market. Contrary to what people think, like I'm pretty active in the market. I've spent most of my, last half decade trading on Ethereum, on Avalanche, on Arbitrum, on Solana, like using every single Telegram bot, every single trading terminal, every single perp dex. So I have a really good sense of like, what the user wants. And it's important for me to stay tapped in. So I'm in a lot of trading chats. I'm in all these like different DM messages with some of the top traders. We have our one-on-one chats with pretty much like every user on Fomo who wants to give us feedback. So you kind of need to always be understanding like where's the meta going. And it's not very different than being a good trader, right? Part of being a good trader is like identifying the meta ahead of time, positioning yourself, and then just waiting or trying to craft a narrative to reinforce what you think is going to happen. Same thing for building, right? You want to understand like, all right, in 3 months, what does this world look like? What is going downhill? What is going uphill? What if people not realize is, the next best thing? And how do you build towards that in a way where you're ready whenever they're ready? Because being too early is a curse as well, right? There's a lot of these teams that they ship a product, great idea, but it's just a little bit too early or a little off the mark. And then you end up killing the company or killing the product entirely versus, being on time. Timing is everything. So one of the things that I forget who said this, but he actually was like, hey, I typically think the best ideas are ideas that have been tried and they've just been tried at the wrong time. And that's true of prediction markets, that's true of decentralized perps, that's true of AMMs. Like pretty much all of these things to some extent have had their moments, for a little bit before they really took off and blew off the top. So I like to think that, things are out there and you need to be plugged in and understand and really feel the market for you to be able to build towards it.
And given you're speaking to all these traders, you're in all these chats as well, like as you have to be to have a sense on the market, who are, it's kind of like asking a parent who their favorite child is, but like, who are some of your favorite traders on FOMO that, you feel like actually have incredibly good takes on the markets? And are you actually taking, obviously you probably couldn't do it on your public account because you don't want to like, you know, be seen to be like helping or pushing any specific coin, but are you also trading on that information as well? Are you kind of trading on your own app? I'm sure you are, but you know what I mean, in a more like active kind of way.
Yeah, I've retired trading like very small market cap coins, and I'm typically a buy and hold guy. Like I think it was who said this the other day? It was on In the Trenches interview. I forget if it was Adam or Santos or I think it was Adam, but he was like, I just buy 1% of the coin at 1 mil and I just let it ride. Right. That's typically like how I trade as well. It's like I'll just look for an opportunity that is, let's say in the few millions, buy a percentage or so of it and just hold it, right? And that's been pretty bad for the last, let's say, year and a half, where everything's just kind of gone down. But that's just my style. Like even when I was actively trading, I'm not a person who just quick flips or tries to do swing trading. I just try to identify a narrative, and 9 out of 10 things will lose. But the one thing that does win is 100x, and that often ends up covering everything else. So that's typically how I trade. I've always traded that way. Yeah, that's how it is. Hopefully for the foreseeable future, just finding good spots and trying to understand the narrative. Um, I don't know if I have a favorite trader. I think anybody that is on the Fomo leaderboard, I look up to, right? As somebody who has done it previously, mostly with a private wallet, it's incredible to see people have poise in public, right? Like it's really hard to tell what does your execution look like when there's 500,000 people watching you and 100,000 people get notified every time you do something. So, if you look at the top of the leaderboard, you see Change, who's done 2 million in P&L, and that dude has done everything like right. He hasn't been pumping dumping coins. He doesn't really buy low market cap coins. He builds a thesis and then hits a seven-figure P&L on, a few $100 million coin. And I think that that's incredibly commendable because he's just there, right? Like think about how early he bought VVV and think about where it is today. It's now one of the hottest, coins that people are thinking about every day. And he made $1 million on that. He probably has fumbled another three, but he had the foresight to understand where that's going. And I think that's incredibly commendable. Um, my favorite users though are like the people who talk shit. Like I really, really, really like talking to the people who are just like trashing us on the timeline, given it's reasonable, obviously. Because why does this suck? Why don't you like your experience? What is the thing you don't like? How do we solve this problem, right? Because it's one thing for your favorite traders to be telling you how much they love the platform, and that's great. But that's probably, 1% is helpful. Somebody who's a real issue and says, hey, this is not what I expect it to be. This is the thing that you guys are lacking, go fix it. And those are the conversations that really drive us because they do much better for the product for everybody else than anything else.
I think everyone must think Change is like some sort of like crazy FOMO insider, and that he's like some industry plant that you guys have somehow put there. But like, you just can't really discredit a trade like a VVV trade. It's like there's just like a little bit. The guy's just too good. You can't stop him. How do you think that the public side of the trading like actually affects the average trader, right? Because like you said, now you're really having to consider every entry, every exit. You kind of look like a bitch if you sell for if you take out initials at 2x, if you're like based on your size, based on all these things. Like, do you think that the average person will trade better or worse when they're trading in public?
I think that's a good question. I really think there's no one answer fits all here. I think if you're somebody who is not influenced by the public and you are a good actor, you'll probably do just fine, right? You'll probably do better because people keep you accountable. I think like one of the kind of examples here is, I used to trade perps all the time, right? And I had always marked these charts with level to level. Here's my take profit, here's my stop loss. And if I followed my own advice, I'd be the greatest trader in the world. But 10 minutes into a trade, I'm like, oh man, like something went wrong. I don't know what, but I'm just going to cancel this trade. And I think what public trading does is keeps you accountable, right? You write a thesis, you mark a chart, you give out your explanation for what something's going to happen. Unless that thesis is invalidated, the expectation is you're going to hold that, right? You're going to do that thing that you said you're going to do unless something changes. So in some ways, like you're actually protecting yourself from yourself, where you can come out with a framework, you can publish it, and then you can just let people hold you accountable, right? Let's say you start selling when you say, hey, I think this is going to be the next 100x runner, then people keep you accountable. Like, hey, you're dumping, like, you're losing credibility or you're not keeping yourself honest. And I think that's the beauty of transparency. It cuts both ways. And obviously people like to blame the platform itself for that. But if you think about it, like this transparency already exists. Like you and I already have all these wallets, right? We already track all these people. It's just now the public gets to see it as well and come to their own determination of what's actually happening. So it's this like concept of practical obscurity where now everybody has information, so it seems like a problem, but in reality, like this thing has been happening the whole time, and the only way to actually fix the underlying is to shed light on it and transparency.
And obviously, there's the thesis component that like, it's actually funny. Like we did a similar thing on Ox back in the day. Like we let people like when they were placing perp trades share like small amounts of text and they could like copy and counter. And but I think that it's been done obviously in a slightly more polished way, in a way that's like taken off even more on FOMO, like more than we've seen anywhere else. Do you see that expanding in any other way where like maybe this becomes like an OG pump fun threads style thing where like people can also add like media, maybe add like a video explaining their thesis, or if they want to go out in public and like bag work their coin in some way, and like almost making it so that like the FOMO becomes also a place for the coin communities, right? Like recently we saw X communities in theory were being deprecated, although they still seem to be around. So I think maybe they decided not to do that, right? But I think it like does raise a good point about where these communities are and like how they form. And if you already have this social layer, then potentially pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we're always looking to improve that, right? Social, I think, is the thing that has been least developed since we launched, where we've added theses, we've added likes, we've done some of these things, but that's still like the biggest what if for us is how do we increase the surface area of social? How do we have social discovery? How do we have ways to interact, to maybe even comment, to send messages with media, to post videos, to educate? Like, there's so many things we can do here. And I think what ends up happening with social media platforms is this is all valuable. Like objectively, these are all things that can be done right. But once you throw everything out at the wall together, then it becomes a bit confusing, right? It's like, do I go, create a video? Do I go reply in a comment? Do I go retweet? Like, what do I do here if you're releasing all these things at the same time? So our core philosophy has been like release it simply over time, add new features, get feedback, and be iterative over time where you can just add a feature on top of a feature and it compounds rather than you releasing five at once and confusing the user on what's important. So hierarchy of UX and UI is incredibly important to us, but yeah, that's like the most under discovered or underbuilt feature of Fomo so far in social, contrary to what people think.
But I think you guys obviously still building towards becoming this like everything app, right? Like I think anyone in crypto who thinks about, they have a product, how can they increase their revenues in like every way possible, then it's like, how do we make our own stable coin? How do we offer yields? How do we offer all these kind of things on top? But kind of like you just said, if you give people too many things, it starts to become confusing. They start to not know where to go. Like, do you have any current kind of opinion or outlook on how that's going to look for FOMO? Because let's say you continue to grow at this rate and you keep getting these users, then what does it look like for you to integrate more features, right? Like I think a lot of people obviously want to know if you guys are going to add perps, and like I'm sure you are, right? Like it's just like the natural progression. But what does it look like beyond that?
Yeah, I think you hit something that's really interesting, which is everybody wants to be the everything app, but we typically think that's fundamentally like the wrong thing to do. Because if you're the everything app, you're almost a nothing app, right? In at least the Western world, like it's not really possible for you to be an everything app in the same way you can be in China, for example, right? In China, you have an app where you can, text your family, order an Uber, go buy crypto, deposit money. Like you can do everything in one app in China because that is something that let's say the country structurally is allowed for. I don't really think it's possible in the Western world for one app to do all those things, right? Imagine like Facebook combines with TikTok, with Chase Bank, with Coinbase, with Robinhood, with Uber Eats. Like that's just not something that I think is viable at all. So if you take a step back from that, it's like, okay, so you can't be the everything app. So what does that mean? And that means for us, we need to be a very specific app. So specifically, we need to be the place where you never miss out again, right? You want to buy stocks, we got it. You want to buy perps, you got it. Yield, have it. Bank account, have it. Like in a world where like you need to speculate on different things, you need to have this idea in mind. It's like, oh man, like I don't know where to get it. Where should I go? It should be FOMO, right? So for us, it's the social layer and the trading speculation aspect that we really want to lean on. Where one, you can always see what people are doing, so you're never missing out in that aspect. But two, we want to have every product available, so you never have to miss out there. That means that we strictly eliminate a lot of things that people are interested in, like maybe your 401k, for example. Like we don't really think that that fits in our MO, right? Because it's not something that we think allows you to never miss out again. And in fact, it's probably very contrary, where you probably want to avoid the things that you might be missing out. So different philosophies, I think, for different builders, but for us, we're very intentional about the products we roll out. And yeah, a lot of stuff we're excited about the rest of the year. I think that FOMO, a year ago looked nothing like it did today. We launched maybe 11 or 12 months ago, and FOMO a year ago from today will look much different than it does today as well, just because we're going to be iterating, adding new things, and these all need to be a very fluid experience between all the products that we add.
You guys gonna add a like a proper kind of like revenues and fees and users like page maybe somewhere on the platform or somewhere online? Because I was having a look and stuff like that, and I think right now a lot of the information that's out there still seems mildly dated towards like specifically the Solana side of things. But you guys have obviously added and are constantly adding new chains all the time. So you know, I know that there's kind of like some elements of you guys wanting to mildly like withhold data in some ways to make things simpler, but is that something that you maybe would also share with like the public?
Yeah, I think DeFi Llama does a great job of capturing like 70 to 80% of our volume and activity. So we work closely with teams who are interested in indexing that data because it's all on chain, right? We're not hiding. There's nothing for us to obscure in any
Yeah, of
way.
course, of course.
Um, yeah, I think in our mind, like when it gets to the point where somebody wants to build an entire dashboard and ask questions about it, then we're making progress. I think to date, people have been interested in Solana. We've worked with Adam to build some stuff there maybe about 8 months ago. It's obviously a little bit outdated given the EVM stuff. But yeah, it's like if anybody wants to like as like a passion project, just build that for the community, we'd love to support that. I think from our perspective, it's like it's a little bit of I don't want to say wasted time, but operational overhead for us to go and maintain that and do this constant upkeep. So we'd rather refocus the time on building the product and the features. We're a pretty lean team. We only have, 7 engineers, right? And the team itself is quite small as well. So every single, hour of work really adds up.
How do you feel like team capacity like in crypto is, right? Like the you have on one end you have the hyperliquid, which is like, in terms of revenue, profit, whatever per employee is like insane. It sounds like you guys are not too dissimilar. Like what's your sort of philosophy and experience been kind of building the FOMO team? Like I heard some early interviews you were talking about how actually some of the guys came on initially were, basically foregoing pay to begin with because they, aligned with the vision and saw the opportunity. What's it been like to build out the FOMO team and being careful to not bring on too many guys and slow things down? Very much kind of like Pavel
Yeah,
kind of way actually.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So we're pretty aligned with like how Hyperliquid views it and how Pavel views it, and it's the ethos that we think makes the most sense for where we are. We want to remain pretty lean. We want to bring in S tier players. We want them to contribute, um, hold their own weight, have a lot of ownership, and just be able to like have outsized impact in something very specific. There's a lot of great people that I speak to pretty often where it's like, hey, like I do XYZ. I cover a lot of ground, and I'd love to work with you at FOMO. And for us, like the one question is like, what is like the 10x you bring, right? Like, what is the one thing that you bring that increases our chance of success so drastically? Because if you don't do it, we're not going to find somebody else that can do it just as well as you can. And I think with crypto, there's a lot of people who are generalists, right? Like people are good at a lot of things. They can do BD, they know the markets, they know, how to do growth, they know how to run a social. Like these are all great skills. And for specific companies, these are things that I think go a long way. FOMO, we need to find someone that is absolutely world class at one thing, and we need to be able to have them do that at scale. So that's what we think about the team structure. We don't really hire non-technical people, to be honest. They kind of just come to us. Every single non-technical person we've ever hired has been inbound or through networks and meeting interesting people, right? We've never put out a JD for any of these roles, whether it's like a community lead or head of growth or BD lead or whatever it is. So that's been incredibly fulfilling to be able to connect with great people through others. And then on the engineering side, yeah, the bar is really high. Like, we interview a lot of people. We'd love to add people to the team. It's not that we're saying, hey, we want to remain small for the sake of remaining small. It's just we want to find people who can exceptionally deliver, additive value to the thing that we're building in a way that we feel like, okay, this person can increase our chance of success by 5%, 10%, et cetera. And shy of that, like we're not going to compromise and we'll find the ways to prioritize things with the team that we have.
And I think also like I'll give my perspective as someone who's obviously like very entrenched in CT, but I think on the retail side, and it completely makes sense for you guys to start within crypto, but obviously like the future vision is like how do we go into retail as well, right? How are you kind of viewing that, and like is there anything that you're doing there that maybe people aren't aware of already? How do you kind of see it in terms of you as a company and a training platform trying to like take responsibility for also trying to grow the pie in some ways by onboarding that retail?
Yeah, I think this is the number that shocks a lot of people, but 90% of users on FOMO today are not crypto Twitter. So, of the 600,000 people, maybe 500,000 plus are coming from traditional rails, right? TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, word of mouth, friends of friends. Like these are people that we have a lot of reason to believe either have never traded on chain, have never traded crypto, or have never traded like the select assets that we have on the platform. And that's really like the end goal here is right. It's like, how do you get to 5 billion people in the world using your application that otherwise would have never tried crypto, right? How do you get to the point where you abstract away all the difficulties of the blockchain and create this experience that just feels like a traditional app, right? It's like, we're on this call right now and I couldn't tell you like, okay, which data server is, hosting our call? Like, where is this being plugged into? Like, what are the things that are actually powering this? And we shouldn't have to know that. I think we feel the same way about crypto where, hey, you want to buy this thing, you want to do this action, you can do it in 3 clicks. You don't have to know how it's done, why it's done. You can if you want to. There's always a way to, transparently understand what's happening with the ledger. But our view is that the only way crypto actually breaks into the traditional main world is you don't have to know it's crypto. So that's been a core philosophy of ours that we try to follow pretty closely in every product decision that we make.
And I guess like something else I saw like is I saw in another interview said I think it was actually one of your partners who was talking about one of your co-founders mentioning dot FOMO domains potentially like down the line? Is that something you guys have made any progress with, and or if not, what is like the vision for that in some ways maybe?
We haven't, but that's such a sick idea. It's like imagine .ENSs where you can send to Nico.eth or whatever it is, but you can just do like Nico.Fomo and I can send it to you on any chain we support, no matter what it is or where it's coming from. I think that's actually incredibly interesting. The challenge there is you have to integrate into pretty much every wallet and block explorer and get a good set of partners there. I think at some scale, like it's inevitable. Like we're gonna be at this place where it's just like Venmo, where we can go to dinner and I know your profile, so I don't even have to ask you like, how do I send you this money? I just send you $200 of Mudang or $200 of USDC or whatever it is, and that's a cool future where social actually connects different people from different parts of the world without you having to deliver any more information. So in the future, I think for now we feel like we have to grow probably by a few orders of magnitude for that to be effective, but really cool idea, and I hope we can get there.
Awesome. I mean, that's pretty much most of the questions that I had, and I think we probably covered a lot of grounds here, hopefully fairly efficiently for people. Are there any big updates coming up or specific things you want to kind of point people towards?
Yeah, I mean, stay tuned. We want to launch a new product in the next 2 weeks. I don't want to give too much away there yet, but something cool going on there. And yeah, we're always thinking about the user. Like, what do they want to do? How do we service that need? And how do we do it efficiently? So the whole team is heads down building on a project right now that we're super excited to show the world. And other than that, yeah, please get feedback. Like, use the web app, use the mobile app. I literally read every single DM. Like, I'm not even kidding. I wake up every morning and there's maybe 80 DMs, a lot of spam, a lot of feedback, a lot of whatever, but I read every single one. And chances are, if I didn't reply to you, it's because you just, said hello, or you said, you sent me a coin to show, and or something that, wasn't really productive for a conversation. But if there's an issue, I want to know. If there's something great, I want to know, whether on web or mobile. And yeah, my DMs are always open. And I'll read those, for the time, for as long as, we run FOMO.
Oh yeah, awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming on, and I hope people enjoyed, and then I think they know where to find you, and all the links will be there and stuff. Don't worry.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Edgar.